Hi, I'm George, the co-founder of Bluethumb, and I'm joined by my colleague Amy. Welcome to the Art in My Home podcast.
We uncover the surprising stories from the art collections of unexpected guests.
Today's guest is Jen Bishop. Jen's a journalist and founder of the incredibly popular interior design website, Interiors Addict. It's been featured on ABC, Channel 10, Better Homes and Gardens, and lots more. And it helps everyone get joy from their home, which we love here at Bluethumb. So welcome, Jen.
Welcome, Jen. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I am a big Bluethumb fan.
Fantastic. Could you describe your home to us, what the decor, theme, mood is overall?
I think it's it's a little bit of a mix between classic and modern, but I do love colour. So I try and keep the base pretty neutral, and then there's just colour pops everywhere. So very much in terms of artwork and accessories, that's where all the colour is. So art is a huge part of that colourful home that I've created. And people always comment too when they come in, they're like, oh, look at all your artworks. I'm like, yeah, see that if you took the artworks out of my home, it would be so dull.
I love the work behind yourself. It looks like it's a great background regardless.
Yeah.
It's just so much movement in it.
Yeah, there's a really interesting story to this one. I've had it for about 7 years, and this is an original, and it was by a guy called Christopher Broome on the Gold Coast. He was an electrician turned artist, and I actually haven't connected with him for some time, but I don't think he's painting anymore, which is really sad because this is one of the most commented upon artworks in my home. And, you know, if people see it in the background, they always comment, but I don't think he's painting anymore. But just really interesting to me that he was an electrician and then he went into art, and I believe he's now gone back to being an electrician. But it's just a beautiful piece and a really interesting story.
So multi-talented.
Yeah, absolutely. To sort of have those two parts of your brain, you know, that really creative side and that sort of technical side, both be good is quite rare, I believe.
I think so.
Okay, we're going to have to make a note to find him. And
yeah, get him painting again and get
Even
him on
weekend.
Bluethumb because, you know, it's beautiful work. And I love finding out those stories as well, like the stories behind the piece.
For sure.
Yeah, we have a popular artist, Charlie Nanos, who was a carpenter, I believe, turned artist.
Amazing.
Yeah, and I love his work. And yeah, he's still doing art, I think, full time.
Good.
Thankfully.
Yeah, he is. What's the kind of vibe that you hope guests feels when they come into your house?
I want people to feel cozy and like they can sit down and be relaxed and comfortable. And I think lots of people do say that, which makes me so happy. I want people to come in my home and enjoy it and feel comfortable in it. While I am a bit of a neat freak, I'm also not precious. I have 2 little boys. So even though I like my home to be nice, you know, if people come around with kids, I don't want them to say, don't touch Jen, something or other. Like, it's just not like that. So I do believe that you can have a nice home with kids and not have to be really worried and precious about it. Yeah. And that's a good thing about art. You can invest in art and it's on the wall. It's generally pretty safe, even from
really
kids.
Playable, is it?
Exactly. Even when there's many boys running around, it's generally pretty safe up on the wall. So there's another top tip.
They're not really interested in it as a...
No, they're oblivious. Yeah.
Can you recall when you first fell in love with art?
I was thinking about this. It's a really good question. And I can actually recall the first piece of original art I bought. It was when I was 21. And through a family friend, we were introduced to this local artist. This was when I was living in the UK. And we went to their home and she sort of did a talk and showed us her art. And she'd done this beautiful painting of an old bank in Oxford. And I'm in love with Oxford. It's just a beautiful city. And yeah, I was 21 and I had no money because I was working as a local newspaper reporter and that ain't a well-paying job. But I really wanted to have that and I really wanted to have the original. And I can't remember how much it was. I feel like it was something like £1,000, so maybe like $2,000. It was certainly a big investment at that time. And I felt like not many 21-year-olds would do were thinking to spend that much money on a piece of art, but I just really wanted it. And she let me pay it off sort of on some kind of payment plan. I think I paid it off over like 6 months or something. And I think that's where it started. And I also think that's where I learned that it was really nice to have a connection with the person who had done the work. And that's something that I really like now, is when I get to know an artist, which I often do through work and through interviewing artists for the blog. I love when I get to know them. If I then have a piece of theirs in my home, it just feels that much more special and personal, because you have, there's a human connection there as well.
For sure.
Do you still have that piece?
I do, yes. Yeah. It actually is waiting to be reframed, because I've had it for that long, but I definitely still have it and I still love it. And yeah, that's the thing. If you buy something that you love, you will always find a spot for it. And something like reframing can actually make something work again in a new home, in a new country. I remember bringing it home from the UK to Australia and being very concerned about bringing it home, and it had to be in my hand luggage, and I didn't want to check it in and I didn't want to lose it. So yeah, after a few years of being in Australia, made its way over here. Just hasn't made its way to the framers yet, which is something I can be quite bad at.
And what are some of the other artists in your collection that you have?
Nearly entirely Australian artists, actually.
Fantastic.
And I think I've just got so much more into art and collecting art since I've been over here. I don't know if that's because I've been older or had a bit more money to spend, or just from writing about homes and art and interviewing artists, you just get more into it. So Kirsten Jackson, Mia Oakley, Casey Burrell, Ali McNabney Stevens, just a lot of Melbourne artists actually. Jasmine Mansbridge, lots of Melbourne artists, and a lot of very, they're all very colourful pieces, all of them.
And whereabouts, out of interest, would you have found their work? Is that purely from when you're looking for like jobs yourself, or like just
I have to say a lot of the time on Instagram.
Fantastic.
I've become aware of artists, or see them sharing, or see other people sharing their work. And sometimes artists will pitch themselves to the blog for a story, for an interview, or they have a new collection, or they want to tell us about an exhibition that they're doing. So all different ways. Yeah, I'm probably more exposed to it than most people, but I have to say a lot of the time it's Instagram.
Mm. And you mentioned colour is sort of a real theme of what you love. Is there a style that you're attracted to? Like that's an abstract behind you. Is it mainly abstracts, or is it?
It is. It's mainly abstracts. Preparing for this chat, it was really interesting actually to just go and have a look around and say, oh, what am I going for? Because I do just pick things that resonate, that I love. I don't think, oh, this is my style, but most of them are abstracts. If there was a second genre, it would be florals. So I have a few that are florals, yeah.
We have some great floral abstract artists, actually.
We actually do, yeah.
I know. I need to keep away from the website, though, because it's just like a candy store.
It can be dangerous, can't it?
Yeah.
Do you think your taste has changed over the years, like what you look for in colour as well? Do you think that changes with time, or you just have your taste and that's what you like?
I don't think it's changed hugely, but I do think that living in Australia, I've embraced colour a lot more. And I think that is just to do with the weather, and our interiors are a bit, they're lighter and brighter, the neutrals and things like that. And I don't know, I think once I realised the power that a colourful artwork could have and how game-changing it can be for a room, I just have got more and more into colourful, and definitely pink. I mean, there's pink in every artwork I own, I think, bar none. Like every one of them has a fair amount of pink. Maybe it's because I am the only woman in my house with my husband and 2 sons that I'm just like, right, I'm having pink.
Absolutely.
Deal with it. Yeah.
Absolutely. I had a question for you actually, because I love the scale of this large abstract, and I want a big painting, and I'm scared of getting sick of it eventually. If I'm going for a big, bright abstract in my house, how to kind of overcome that choice to commit to something like that. And like how you came, like how you decided which ones you wanted to like, because you are committing to them for forever.
And I probably have only a couple which are on this scale. So this is an original, but I have a huge Kirsten Jackson print in my living room.
Yes.
It is huge, and it really makes the room.
Yeah.
It fits the space perfectly. But a big piece like that, as an original, is going to cost a lot of money.
Sure.
Even as a print, actually, as a huge print, once it's got a mat and a frame, it's still a decent commitment. But I just think my philosophy with art has always been, when I love something, I really, I feel very like almost emotional about it. And if I love it, I'm just always going to love it. There will be a space for it. You don't need to have a whole home full of huge pieces. So yeah, I've got two, and this is a very big living dining space. So those two big extra large works, they're both in here. And it needs it really. Sometimes if you have a big open plan room, I think you do need to, scale up, spend a bit more money, and it's just worth it, I think.
For sure.
Yeah, my philosophy is always buy the bigger one.
Yeah, and it's the same with rugs. Actually, if in doubt, go bigger with rugs and art. But do measure, because actually for the big Kirsten Jackson, I did measure for that. And then we used to have a picture rail in this room, and when the artwork arrived framed, to actually hang it was so hard because it was very tight, sort of where the picture rail was underneath it. So I did have to get a professional round to do it, because otherwise it would have been banging into the ceiling and oh my goodness. So yeah, just always masking tape them out, I say, just to be extra safe.
Go big and get the professionals.
Sometimes, yeah, exactly. Sometimes, it's definitely worth it. And it only costs like $150 or something to have someone come and hang that one piece. So it was very worth it.
Yeah, for sure. Do you have, besides the one behind you, any other favorite pieces?
Gosh, that's like asking for a favorite child. I do love the one behind me. Like I say, that gets so many comments. The big Kirsten Jackson one I keep talking about, that just is it's just become really identifiable with my house and my kind of color pop sort of aesthetic. And a lot of people who read the blog would recognize it and recognize that room from seeing that large piece of art. I have a lovely original by an artist called Laura White, which is of peonies. And I actually commissioned it for my kitchen when we did a new kitchen, and funnily enough it now lives in my bedroom. But I think that's the thing, is that when you love something, you'll keep it, you'll just move it around, or you might reframe it, or you might just put it in a different spot. It's always served me well that if you really love it, you will keep it. You'll find somewhere else. It will work somewhere else.
It's lovely it can translate multiple rooms as well.
Yeah, and it's also quite nice to just like what I call shop your home. When you get a bit bored, you can move stuff around and try and look at things with a sort of fresh pair of eyes. Okay, the artwork that's the living room artwork, it's a beautiful artwork. Would it work in my office, or would it work somewhere else? And often things have been swapped around here.
And it's interesting what
years.
like different life it can give in another room as well.
Yeah.
Oh, why did I never think of that before?
Exactly.
I've had it for 10 years. Why have I just moved it now? Kind of thing.
I know. It's like it can move. You just take it off the wall and stick a nail in somewhere else. Exactly. And it can be, that's right. And it can be really refreshing when you think, oh my God, that actually works better in here. So I'm a big one for moving stuff around. We did some renos recently, and I had to move a few things because we actually put a new wall up. And so there was shelving on that wall, and I had to move things around, but it was quite fun. I was like, don't buy more art, Jen. Don't do it, because you have so much. Just, calm down and like work with what you've got. And I still have too much, so I'm on a bit of a ban at the moment.
Well, putting a new wall in is great. You've got more space now.
You would think so, but it has the TV on it, and it has built-in shelving either side. But I do actually have one artwork sitting on the shelving, which is another thing. It's like that used to be on the wall, but now it's sort of propped up on a shelf, and I really like that. That was like, oh yeah, why not? That's a great way to add a bit more color over there.
I'm noticing this in like interiors, but would you notice that that's kind of a thing that people are doing these days, like getting lots more little works, popping them on shelves instead of hanging them?
I think so. I feel I'm seeing a bit less of the gallery wall, but having those smaller works like propped up or grouped or on a shelf, or leaning against something. I always think that's quite refreshing as well. It's just a bit different.
Yeah, for sure.
And Jen, you sent through an interesting print. Do you only buy limited edition prints, or you'll sort of collect anything, whatever speaks to you?
Most of my prints have been limited edition, but I'm not snobby about it.
Yeah.
You know, like I don't really care with prints. Like where I do love to have an original, especially like I say, if I have a connection with the artist. And there's just something lovely about knowing you have, you know, the original. But with prints, I'm not that fussed if it's open edition or limited. If I love it and it works in my budget, and I would say more than half of my collection's prints. And yeah, I've got a mix of prints on canvas and prints on paper as well. Yeah.
It provides nice different mediums as well.
Yeah,
not
that's it.
the same sort of medium that it needs to be.
Yeah.
Is there an artwork that you've let get away from you that you can't stop thinking about?
I don't think there is, but that's probably just because I'm so spoilt with the amount that I'm exposed to that I probably wouldn't get that hung up on it. If I really loved it that much, I probably would have bought it.
Yeah, sure.
And if I kind of loved it but didn't really love it, something else is going to come along next year that I'm going to love, because I really just have to restrain myself, because if I bought everything I loved, I'd have no money.
I always say if I had endless money, I think I'd have terrible taste, because I just would have brought everything I've loved over the years, and it would have been like this amalgamation of like growth, and I'd be like, what was I thinking? I had no restraint. Absolutely.
And that's something with age as well that does improve, because when I first started the blog and was just so excited by everything and wanted every trend I saw, I did make a lot of mistakes, and now I'm 43. I have a much better idea of my style. I can kind of sit on things and save up and wait and see if I still really want it.
Yeah.
So that's probably got better. It's one of the few upsides of getting old.
Are there any particular artists or artworks that you think would be next? Is there anything you're close to pulling the trigger on?
I'm not, to be honest. But I think that's because I really am really happy with my lot at the moment, you know, and we've just finished what's probably the last renovations in this house we've been in for about 7 years. I just feel really settled with it. Like I have all the pieces that I need, and I mean, you know, never say never, but I feel like all the rooms have the pieces they need, and that it's all working really well. So yeah, you know, of course I'm always open to falling in love with something else, but at the moment I'm pretty happy with my collection.
And do you have any artists that you keep your eye on that you're like, that would be great for in the future, for any projects maybe?
I'm always looking at Australian, follow so many on Instagram. I obviously spend a lot of time on Instagram for work, as I'm always saying to my husband, this is work. And I think because of that, I'm following lots of artists actually, I was thinking this morning. Joan Blond is an artist whose work I love, and I think if I was going to say I'm going to invest or I'm going to save up for a large scale original, I think Joan Blond is definitely someone I would consider.
Fantastic. Well, why don't we get into a bit of your background, Jen?
Sure.
Could you tell us the story behind the inceptions of Interior Addict and kind of what motivated you to start the blog?
Okay, it's a long story, but I'll try and keep it relatively short. So I'm by background a journalist and from the UK. So I started my career in the UK on newspapers and have written about news and crime and court reporting and all completely different things to this world of interiors I now find myself in, and don't have any design qualifications, you know, just have journalism qualifications, but have always loved making a home. Even in every rental home or share home I was in, I always wanted to make them nice. I don't really go for this don't bother until you own it kind of thing. I want my home to be a sanctuary, to be cozy, to be joyful, all of those things.
For sure.
anyway, so there I was working in news and crime and police things. And then in 2008, I moved to Australia. I then ended up working on a business magazine for 5 years. And I loved writing and I loved managing my team and putting together magazines, but I just had this real side love for interiors and homewares and that kind of thing. So I started a Tumblr, and bearing in mind this was never supposed to be a job or a public site for other people, it was just for me. And so I started it just as a hobby. I was still working on the business magazine, and I don't know, I just started approaching interior designers to interview them. And it's quite flattering, I guess, like it's flattering to be asked to be in this podcast. So everyone said yes. And I started getting some quite big names on there. And after about 18 months of doing this completely as a hobby, I got made redundant from that business mag job. And I was going to go and get another job. And then a lot of people, and I guess I had quite a few contacts then who were entrepreneurs because I'd interviewed them or profiled them. And a lot of them said, you could make that into something that could be a business. And I was like, don't know about that. Never considered myself a entrepreneur, business owner, very risk averse person. But I thought, you know what, I'll give it a go. And I did. And I gave it 6 months, and it's now been, I think, 13 years. So that's a short version of how it came to be. Yeah. So obviously I had to monetize it. I had to make money. And that's changed over the years. When I started, people bought ads. People don't really do that anymore. They buy content. I'll write about them or post about them on Instagram or be a brand ambassador, all these different ways to work with brands. But yeah, it's been over a decade, which just seems completely ridiculous, but I'm thrilled about it.
Fantastic. I love it started on Tumblr. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Well, it started because it started on Tumblr. Then when I had to monetize it and make it professional, I had to move it onto WordPress because I couldn't run ads on Tumblr. So I had to pretty quickly get with the program and professionalize things there. So yeah.
Fantastic. Interiors Addict covers a wide range of content, still within the design space, I guess. But you do artist interviews, home tours, design tips.
Yep.
What do you like doing the most?
I think I like the most writing the profile pieces because I think that's, as a journalist and as an intrinsically nosy person, I love to know the story behind someone, whether that's an artist, a homewares brand owner, an interior designer. So I enjoy those interviews, but I also have to be mindful of what my reader wants. While they love those pieces, they also love before and after homes. So we do a lot of those. And they want practical tips for making their home nicer on all kinds of budgets. So that's what we're trying to provide. And when it comes to art, we have a lot of content about choosing art, how to start a collection, what to spend, how much do I need to spend? And so, I'm pretty big on educating people that you don't have to spend a fortune. But if you want to invest, then absolutely invest in a couple of pieces. But you can get some great results with prints or limited edition prints. And that allows you to pick where on the scale you want to be spending your money.
What's your absolute number one or number two tips for someone starting their collecting journey?
Buy it because you love it and it makes you feel like something. Because whenever I've done that, I've never gone off it. I don't think I've ever gone off an artwork. So much as I'm not snobby about art, and I think that everyone should be able to access having their own collection at any price point, it's much nicer to have an open edition print from a local artist who you've somehow connected with or got to know a bit more about them. That's nicer than a mass-produced something from a high street store. You might love it, but you're probably never going to feel a real connection with it. I'm not going to look down on people that may have gone and bought something from Kmart and loved it. That's great. But for a bit more, you could probably get an open edition print from a local artist that you can have a chat with on Instagram DMs and just feel a little bit more special about having that in your home.
Yeah, that's
Love that.
lovely. Yeah. What has been the most rewarding part of running your blog, Jen?
Look, I always just say I created myself a job that I love and I still get to do it, which is just, it's quite simple, but that is hugely rewarding. I mean, when I started it, I didn't have kids. Now I have 2 kids in school. And the biggest reward from self-employment for me now is just the freedom that gives me, being able to volunteer in the canteen, being able to do pickup every day most of the time, just the freedom and the choices that I get. I feel very lucky that I can spend a lot more time with them than if I were in a 9-to-5 working for someone else.
For sure, just that a bit of extra flexibility that you
Yeah.
get with it.
Yeah. I can't imagine ever working for someone else now.
Yeah.
I like to be in control of my own time and not to have to ask anyone else.
What was it daunting moving from sort of being a journalist with your own kind of blog back then to working full time in the design space? Was that step daunting, or it was just a natural, easy sort of step?
I mean, like I say, without a lot of pushes, I don't think I would have done it. I would have carried on doing it as a hobby, probably. So it was daunting, but at the time, when I look back on it now, I think, well, I had a bit of a payout from the redundancy. I didn't have a mortgage. I didn't have kids. I nearly had a husband. We got married later that year. So I was in a position where I could take that risk, which wasn't a huge risk. And that was what motivated me to make it work. I was like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to make it work. And once I could see that it could become a job and that it could be monetized, I just kept going. And now, even when there have been times that have been hard along the way, COVID being one of them, the fear of losing that freedom of self-employment is very motivating. It keeps you working hard because I'm not losing this. I'm going to do whatever it takes to keep this going. So, yeah.
Okay, awesome. Can we talk about design trends of, let's say, 2024, but also, you know, even a prediction for 2025 design trends, interiors, anything you think might be coming based on what you're seeing right now?
Well, I do think we're seeing more colour, which is very exciting because it's something that I love. And we've been through the grey everything and the grey and blush pink everything and
Neutrals.
the neutrals. I wasn't a fan of the warm neutral stage, but that's just personal. You know, I don't like the greige and the
grey
terracottas and I mean, you know, lots of people make it look beautiful, but it's just not me. So I do think we're seeing more color, and I'm like, yes, please, let's keep that. I mean, there's a lot of things which have stuck around and I think will be sticking around for longer, that people said, oh, it's a trend, but it's not. It's proven itself and it's still here. So things like rattan, perhaps in a slightly more subtle way than, you know, not super boho like when it first came in. But people still love that. People still loving wall paneling, whether that's, you know, VJ paneling or wainscoting, people still love that. Green's very on trend and I think that will continue. Green in kitchens is something that I keep seeing a bit more of. So yeah, it's just nice to see colour.
2025, the Jen Bishop.
Oh, I really hope so. I mean, I'm going to embrace it, whatever, but yeah.
I just want to know when pink's going to be the colour of the year, Jen. Like, I feel like
I know.
trying to make a resurgence, or
I know. It's like I go through life thinking everyone loves pink, and then I'm like, oh yeah, no, it's not. I go to my friends' houses; they don't have this pops of bright pink everywhere. Yeah, I know. It's about time, really. We had like a lilac colour of the year, but yeah, it'll come.
Yeah, it'll come. It's
Fuchsia's
coming. It's overdue.
Exactly.
This is probably a hard one to answer, but I was wondering if you had any tips for how to decide on where to hang an artwork in a room.
Yes. In terms of like how to choose and things like that, just something that I can't not talk about is people hanging artwork too high, because it's just like one of those things that people do all the time.
Yeah.
So if everyone can just bring their artwork down a bit to eye level, that would be great. And I don't want to make fun of people for doing that either, because who tells you this stuff, you know? In terms of where, it really depends what's on your other walls, and it's all about context, isn't it? You don't want it to be fighting with something else. If you have a bare wall, it's usually going to be crying out for a bigger piece, but then blank space is also important. So I don't know about tips, as just considering context. And I think people should consider framing as well, and what a huge difference the right frame can make, or having a mat around something can actually, you know, you can buy a smaller piece, have it framed in a bigger frame with a mat. That can be a way to give yourself a bigger artwork for less money. So I just think there's lots of clever things you can do to make more of your collection, really.
And you mentioned you personally don't do the studio walls, the like heaps and heaps of art in one space.
I've done it in the past. I've absolutely embraced that a lot.
Yep.
I mean, in the past, I even had one of those gallery walls that had the TV, and I was trying to, you know, detract from the TVs. I had a lot around it.
Yeah.
But I just think I'm just a bit of a type A personality, and I do think that after a while things get a bit messy, and I just think I need to take it all down, fill all the holes and start again. I just think my brain can't really cope with the more random. I absolutely love seeing other people do it, and I just think maybe I just don't have the skill actually to bring it all together very well. If I did do a gallery wall in the future, I think it would be one of those really uptight, very measured, symmetrical,
perfectly spaced, perfectly sized.
Yeah. And I've done that. I've had a photo wall in my hallway before that was very eclectic, and there was a lot going on, and it, you know, it wasn't measured out, and it stayed there for about 3 years. But then one day my husband came home, he's like, "Where's all the photos?" I just couldn't do it anymore. If we do it again, there's going to be a laser level, there's going to be, you know, tape measure.
Sometimes I see on Instagram, you know, these amazing maximalist kind of, maybe a library with a full wall of books and art everywhere and sculpture everywhere and rugs and furniture all throughout it. And I'm like, my first thought is that looks so cozy and amazing. And my second thought is there must be a lot of dust bunnies in all those little gaps.
Definitely. And every now and again, that photo wall, I would go along with my finger and be like, oh, this is a lot. Yeah, they do gather dust.
On it all.
Yeah, and I do dust the top of my artworks as well, quite on a regular basis.
It's a hot tip, that is. Dust your artwork.
Yeah, they are dust collectors.
Awesome. So what's cooking for Interiors Addict? What else is in the works that you can talk about for this year?
To be honest, nothing particularly different, you know, much of the same. I guess behind the scenes it's probably a bit different in terms of working with brands and what they want and how they want to work with me. But for readers, it's much the same, because, you know, I keep asking them, what do you want different? And they don't want anything different. They want more of the same. So that's kind of good, really.
So what are some of the most sort of enduringly popular kind of articles that you've got? Before
and afters are just always, and who doesn't love before and afters? I think just as humans, we love before and afters, whether that's, you know, people or houses. Exactly. So people still love those, which is great, because I also love those. And then some of the things that are just always popular don't sound very exciting, but they're things like we have this one piece which is about kitchen dimensions, and, you know, like how much space should you have from the floor to the bench top, and what are all the standard dimensions, where should the tap be, and all that kind of thing, and how tall should the stools be, and how much gaps should there be between the bench and the stool. Boring, really, but really useful information that people obviously want. So those kind of how-to and educational articles are also pretty evergreen.
Fantastic. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jen, for coming on and chatting to us.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, it's been lovely to talk about your art and Interiors Addicts.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Right. regret?